I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone buzzed. On the screen was the name of my only daughter, Angela. Her tone was off, distant, almost icy as she said, "Mom, we're leaving for a trip to Europe tomorrow. I've already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the cash. Bye." And with that, she hung up. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing everything for her future. And she threw me aside like I was worthless. Yet I took a deep breath and smiled because there was one crucial thing my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Antonia Brooks. I am 71 years old. And until that phone call, I thought I truly knew my daughter. I had become a widow just 6 months earlier. My husband, Robert, had died from a sudden heart attack while we were eating breakfast, just like we had done every morning for nearly half a century. That day, as always, he poured me coffee with cream, toasted the bread, kissed my forehead, and said, "Good morning, my love." Those would be the final words he ever spoke to me. After his passing, Angela seemed to step into my life more often, or so I believed. She visited 3 times a week, helped arrange the funeral, and even went with me to the grocery store. She suggested I get a full medical checkup. "Mom, you have to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say, smiling in a way I mistook for love, but now I understood it was convenience, not affection. The beach house she sold had been our family's haven for decades. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15. After years of hard work and sacrifice, every summer we spent there was filled with memories, birthdays, Christmases, laughter. Angela brought her boyfriends, and later her husband, Edward. I cooked, cleaned, and did the laundry, as mothers do. It had always been our tradition. Never once did I imagine she would reduce it all to a $sign. And the car that old Ford pickup Robert treated as if it were his own child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil without fail, and always parked it under the same tree in the driveway. Angela knew how much that truck meant to me. It was the last physical piece of him I had left. His scent still lingered on the worn seats. After the call ended, I sat on that uncomfortable green plastic chair surrounded by other patients. For the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something shifted inside me, a strange sense of calm I hadn't felt since Robert's death. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia," he had said, "put this in your dresser drawer. If something ever happens to me, open it, but only when you feel ready." I had tucked it away without much thought. And in the chaos and sorrow following his funeral, I had simply forgotten it existed. But it was still there, waiting for me at home. The nurse called my name and ushered me into the doctor's office. After a quick examination, he told me I was in good health for my age. I just needed more rest and better nutrition. I nodded politely, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope, about Angela's cold voice, and about Edward, who was surely behind this entire scheme. He had never liked me. To him, I had always been a burden. When the appointment was over, I walked slowly to the bus stop. My car was gone now, thanks to Angela, and yet, as I waited, a small smile crept across my face. There was something almost poetic about all of it. My daughter believed she had stripped me of everything. What she didn't realize was that Robert, my thoughtful, forward-planning Robert, had always been 10 steps ahead. On the bus ride home, I gazed out the window at the passing streets, houses, shops, people rushing about, each carrying their own burdens and secrets. I had minatu, and I was about to uncover them. When I reached home, I went straight to my bedroom. There it was, the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up, feeling the weight of multiple documents inside. On the front, Robert had written my name in his careful handwriting. I sat down on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. Dusk was falling outside, and the house was filling with familiar shadows that no longer frightened me. Slowly, deliberately, I opened the envelope as if unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside would change everything. Inside were legal papers, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar script. My dearest Antonia, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to spare you unnecessary worry. Over the years, I've invested our savings in properties and businesses. We didn't just own the beach house. We owned 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward lived. We also had shares in 3 companies worth far more than I could have imagined. You are wealthy. My love, Robert had written. You always were, and now it's official on paper. My hands shook as I flipped through the documents, deeds for homes in various neighborhoods. A downtown condo, a small coastal motel, and indeed, the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Robert had quietly been its owner for 10 years, placing everything under a company name I'd never heard of. According to the paperwork, I was now the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I'd never known existed with balances that looked unreal. Robert had spent 40 years as a bus driver, yet he had been a shrewd investor all along. Every dollar we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied it quietly, without ever telling me. In his letter, he explained why he didn't want me to worry about money. And he certainly didn't want Angela to know the truth. You know our daughter? Antonia, he wrote. If she ever learned how much we truly had, her behavior would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we possess. What an irony. Angela had abandoned me, thinking I had nothing when in reality, we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house, running my fingers over the old furniture and the trinkets Angela used to mock for being outdated. I stared at the family photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5, laughing on Robert's lap. Where had that sweet little girl gone? When had she turned so cold? So calculating. Early the next morning, the phone rang again. It was Angela. Her tone was softer now, but I had learned to distrust those shifts. Mom, how are you? I wanted to let you know we've already transferred the money from the house and the truck. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it should help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share, I asked, keeping my voice even. Yes. Mom, we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair. Right. We need the rest for our investment in Europe. Edwards found an incredible business opportunity. 30% of what was already mine. How generous. I see. And when do you leave this afternoon? Our bags are packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe longer. If the business goes well, don't worry. Mom, when we return, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that suits your needs. My needs. As if she knew a thing about them. Okay, Angela, have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. And with that, she hung up. I stood there with the phone still in my hand, and for the first time since Robert's death, I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but a real one. The situation was so absurd. It was almost funny. My daughter had robbed me. thrown me out of my own house, and spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to fund a European adventure that would almost certainly fail. But what cut the deepest wasn't the money. It was how easily she had discarded me. 45 years of sacrifice, of unconditional love, wiped away with a 2-minute phone call. That was the real wound. I checked my bank account online. As expected, they had deposited what they probably thought was a generous sum, but to me, it was a joke. They'd sold the beach house for far less than it was worth, likely in a rush for cash, and they'd sold Robert's beloved truck for next to nothing. That afternoon, I watched from my window as Angela and Edward loaded their luggage into a taxi. He hauled 2 massive suitcases, while she carried an expensive-looking carry-on. They laughed, kissed, and chatted excitedly like teenagers heading off on an adventure. They never once glanced toward my window. They didn't even say goodbye. After the cab pulled away, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Robert's documents spread out before me. It was time to make some decisions. I could contact a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and legally recover everything they had taken. But something inside me whispered, there was a better way, a way that could teach them a lesson. So I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had managed Robert's affairs. He had attended the funeral, offered his condolences, and told me to reach out if I ever needed assistance. Now, I did. Mrs. Brooks, it's wonderful to hear from you. How are you? I'm doing well. Mr. Peterson, I need to meet with you urgently. I found some documents from Robert that I don't fully understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply. I dreamed of Robert sitting in his favorite chair, reading the newspaper like he always had. When he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. Time to stand up for yourself." I woke with a strange new feeling, not quite happiness, but no longer grief. It was determination. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to take back what was mine, but not in the way Angela expected. The next morning, I dressed more carefully than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress. The one Robert always said made me look elegant. I styled my hair, added a touch of makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in years, a strong woman. Mr. Peterson's office was in an old but elegant downtown building with marble floors and tall windows. He greeted me warmly, but when I handed him the documents, his expression shifted dramatically. "Mrs. Brooks, this is far more than I imagined." Robert was a very shrewd man. "According to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know." "Mr. Peterson," I interrupted. "I've read them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." He explained that everything was valid and that I was the rightful owner of all the properties. He also confirmed what I had already suspected: the sale of the beach house had been illegal because Angela had no authority to sell it. "We can reclaim the house immediately," he said, "and we could also file a lawsuit against your daughter for fraud." "No, Mr. Peterson," I said firmly, "I don't want to pursue legal action. I want to handle this differently. And I want everything to stay secret for now." He raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Of course. What would you like me to do?" "I want you to quietly reverse the fraudulent sale of the beach house and help me gain full, direct control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives." "It's possible," he replied. "It will take a few weeks, but it's entirely doable." "Perfect. And Mr. Peterson, no one can know I'm behind this." "Not yet." When I left his office, it felt as though I had awakened from a long sleep. I strolled through the downtown streets, watching people hurry by, buildings towering over me, life unfolding as usual. But for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The weeks that followed were some of the strangest of my life. Publicly, I was the pitiful widow abandoned by her only daughter. But privately, I was a wealthy woman quietly orchestrating the recovery of everything that had been stolen. Mr. Peterson worked quickly, calling me every few days with updates on the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house. For the time being, it was mine. After all, though Angela had probably assumed I'd move into a small apartment, each morning, I ate breakfast at the same table Robert and I had shared for so many years, then took a walk through the neighborhood. Neighbors greeted me with that mix of pity and curiosity they reserve for recent widows. One afternoon, as I was watering the plants, Aurora, my lifelong neighbor, walked over. "Antonia, dear, is it true? Angela went to Europe and left you all alone." "Yes." "Aurora, she went with Edward. They have business plans over there. And how will you manage?" "Sweetheart, we all know Robert didn't leave you much. If you only knew," I thought. "Don't worry. Aurora, I'll be fine. Do you need anything I can bring you food? Or help with groceries?" "You're very kind. But I'm truly fine." She gave me a look. I recognized the same one I'd seen after the funeral. A mixture of pity and quiet relief that it wasn't her burden to bear. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." The same conversation repeated with the butcher, the baker, even the lady at the corner store. They all spoke to me in that gentle tone people use with the unfortunate. I nodded, smiled, and thanked them. But deep down, part of me enjoyed the performance. It felt like I was living a double life. One Wednesday morning, "Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks, I have good news. I managed to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know it was fraudulent, so they got their money back. The house is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Peterson. And the building where Angela lives, that's more complex. Technically, you've always owned it through the company. But we need to make some administrative adjustments so you have direct control. It should take about 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me updated." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Angela. She'd been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard a word. No calls, not messages, not even a postcard. In her mind, I'd ceased to exist the moment she got the money she wanted. But I knew that would change soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the same bus route Robert and I had ridden hundreds of times before. The house looked exactly as I remembered: small, cream-colored, with a porch facing the ocean. The new owners had added a few potted plants by the steps. But otherwise, nothing had changed. I sat on the curb across the street for an hour, watching it. Memories flooded back summer afternoons when Angela was little, building sandcastles by the water, Robert grilling fish while I prepared salads in the kitchen. Later, Angela brought friends, boyfriends, and eventually Edward. All those precious moments reduced by her to a simple transaction. An older man stepped out of the house and noticed me sitting there. He approached, curious. "Are you all right?" "Ma'am, yes." "Thank you." Just reminiscing. I knew the previous owners. "Oh. Did you? Such a shame about what happened." We were told the elderly lady was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought we were getting a great deal, but it turned out the sale wasn't legal. We had to return the house. "Did you know them personally?" "No. We dealt with intermediaries. They said the daughter handled everything because the mother couldn't." "What a sad situation." He added, "If only you knew how sad it truly was." I thought, well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes. Fortunately, everything was resolved. Though, now we have to find a new place. We really loved this one. I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that stung, it was the ease with which Angela had lied about me. She had fabricated a story about my health, using my supposed frailty to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a human being with feelings. I was an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Miss Peterson again. Mr. Peterson, I need your help with something else. I want Robert's truck back. That will be more challenging. Mrs. Brooks, the truck was in your name, but your daughter had power of attorney, which allowed her to sell it. How is that possible, apparently? You signed the power of attorney a few months ago, after your husband's death? Don't you remember? There it was, the moment Angela's plan had begun. I vaguely recalled signing some papers she'd brought over, telling me they were needed for funeral and inheritance matters. I had been so clouded by grief that I signed them without reading. How naive I had been. I understand. Mr. Peterson, is there any way to recover it? We can try, but it will be complicated. We'd need to prove that you signed under deception or coercion. Let's do it. I want back everything they took from me. Over the next few weeks, my life fell into an odd rhythm. In the mornings, I played the role everyone expected, the poor, lonely widow left behind by her daughter. I ran errands, chatted with neighbors, and kept up appearances. In the afternoons, I shifted into an entirely different gear. The timid widow disappeared, and a Keter, steelier version of me took over. I pulled out Robert's folders, spread them across the kitchen table like a general laying out a battle map, and called Mr. Peterson to review point by point what each paper meant. I reread contracts and statements until the language felt less like a foreign code and more like a story I could follow with confidence. I absorbed terms I had never needed before: amortization schedules, l'imposition, corporate veils, and realized, with a mixture of awe and regret, that Robert had been thinking 3 moves ahead for years while I stayed focused on meals, birthdays, and keeping the house warm. Every investment had been deliberate, every risk measured, every signature placed after careful thought. Consider the building where Angela lived. It did not merely pay its own way through rent. The surrounding streets were transforming, block by block, with new storefronts and renovated facades pushing values upward month after month. The asset wasn't simply productive, it was appreciating, and fast. As I dug deeper, I discovered something else that tightened like a knot in my stomach. Edward, my daughter's husband, was carrying far more debt than I had imagined. He had stacked loans one on top of another and used the very apartment they occupied as collateral. Never once verifying the true ownership, he pledged what he did not possess, and he did it with the boldness of a man certain he would not be caught. Banks, however, are patient hunters. When they finally traced the paperwork and realized he had no legal title to pledge, the consequences would be inevitable. Just then, on a quiet Friday, Mr. Peterson called with news that felt like a door swinging open. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, voice brisk but warm, "we have completed the filings. You now hold direct control over all the properties. And I managed to retrieve Robert's truck as well. The buyer turned out to be an old acquaintance. Once I explained the circumstances, he agreed to return it in exchange for a modest consideration. You've done well, Mr. Peterson, I told him, a calm settling over me that felt almost like relief. There is one more task. I want a letter prepared for my daughter. A letter, he asked. What sort of letter do you have in mind? An eviction notice? I said evenly. Silence hummed at the other end for a beat. Mrs. Brooks? Are you absolutely certain I am? She decided I was of no consequence in her life. Now she can discover exactly how consequential I can be. I understand. Shall I forward it to Europe? No? Deliver it when she returns. And she will return sooner than she thinks. I was not mistaken. That very afternoon, Aurora arrived at my door with the urgency of a town crier. "Antonia," she said. "Jake's flushed." Word is, Edward is in serious trouble with the bank. My brother-in-law works there. They're examining a series of loans he took out with the apartment as collateral. And it turns out the apartment isn't his. Truly, I asked, though the confirmation hardly surprised me. Yes. And Angela apparently knew nothing. People are saying she'll have to fly back to sort through the mess. And there's more. It sounds like the grand European business venture never existed. He spun a story to escape the pile of debt here. Perfect. Exactly as I had anticipated. Angela had traded her own mother for a fantasy and for the man who sold it to her. And now the fantasy was collapsing under its own emptiness. That evening I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and lifted my eyes to the sky. Robert used to say the stars were the souls of those who had lived fully, keeping watch over the ones they loved. If that was true, then he saw me now firm, steady, following the trail he left. "Thank you, my love," I whispered, "for caring for me even in your absence." Early the next morning, Mr. Peterson called again. "Mrs. Brooks, your daughter has just landed." She arrived alone. Alone, so it seems. There are rumors of a bad fight. Shall I send the notice today? Yes, I said. She should receive it by tomorrow. I set the phone down and stood still in the kitchen, the clock ticking and the kettle warming as if nothing had changed. While inside me, everything had moved into place. Weeks of quiet preparation had led to this first honest step. Angela was about to discover that her mother was not the frail, helpless figure she imagined, but a woman with choices and the resolve to carry them out. Angela returned to the apartment on a Tuesday evening. I learned the details the next morning from Aurora, who seemed to possess an invisible wire into every hallway and lobby in the neighborhood. She came in with one suitcase, Aurora told me, and she looked dreadful, pale. Eyes rimmed dark, like she cried all the way. Alone. And listen, when the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. The superintendent had to use the emergency set. Interesting, I thought. Either Edward kept the keys as one last petty control, or Angela fled in such haste that she left without them. In any case, my daughter was back on home soil, and the envelope would be in her hands soon enough. That afternoon, Mr. Peterson called to confirm. "Delivered an hour ago," he said. The doorman witnessed her receiving it. "Excellent. What timeline does it set?" 30 days to vacate. In full compliance with the statute. Mrs. Brooks, he added gently. "Are you sure you want to press this? She is your daughter." Mr. Peterson. My daughter emptied my life with a phone call shorter than a weather report. She sold what was mine without asking and spoke to me like refuse. She needs to learn that choices have consequences. "I understand," he replied. "I merely wanted you to consider the weight of it." I said. "I have weighed every ounce." That night, sleep kept its distance. I pictured Angela reading the notice, confusion blooming first, disbelief following hard behind, and then the thud of panic as the words refused to rearrange themselves into something kinder. She would probably suspect a scam, but verification would show the letter to be legitimate, the signature authentic, and the authority binding. Morning brought the phone call I was expecting. Angela's voice shook. "Mom, I have to talk to you." "Now, good morning, sweetheart," I said evenly. "How was Europe, Mom?" "Please, I can't get into that. I got a letter saying I have to move out in 30 days. It has to be a mistake. You must know something. An eviction notice from whom I asked. Letting the innocents sit between us. From a company I've never heard of. Hold on. Robert Investments, Inc. Do you know it? He had named the company for himself a private little poem, only I would catch. No. Honey, I said. That doesn't ring a bell. Are you sure it's real? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Mom, please, I need you. Edward left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman. And I came back to this. I don't even understand what's happening to my life. There it was. The final puzzle piece. Edward had bolted perhaps when the money ran dry. Perhaps when he recognized how deep a hole he had dug here. Either way, he was gone. And Angela was standing alone inside the mess he helped make. I'm sorry. Honey, I said softly. Where are you now? At the apartment. For now. I don't know for how long. Come see me. I said. You're not alone. I'm on my way, she whispered. I ended the call and walked to the mirror. Time to dress for the role. She expected not deception for cruelty's sake, but a costume to keep the lesson intact. I put on my most conservative gray dress, pinned my hair back into a simple bun, and practiced the expression of a worried, resigned mother who has learned to swallow hurt quietly. When Angela arrived, she would find exactly that. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened it and almost failed to hide my shock. Angela had shed weight. Her eyes were bruised with sleepless shadows. The expensive blouse and skirt she wore were creased and tired. Rebellion in every wrinkle against the life she had tried to perform. Mom, she said, stepping forward as if to hug me, and then stopping with a jerk, remembering the last words that had passed between us. Come in. Honey, would you like coffee? Yes. Please. We sat at the kitchen table, the same surface where I had once laid out Robert's secret life in documents and signatures. In that chair, she looked smaller, younger, like the child who used to drag home a backpack full of spelling tests and confessions. Mom, she began, voice thin. I'm sorry for how I left. I know I treated you terribly. It's behind us, I said, and meant it more than she knew. No, it isn't. I was cruel. I said awful things. And now, her voice broke. Now I have no one. What happened with Edward, I asked, already knowing more than she realized. He ran off with a hotel waitress in Paris, 25 years old. She took a breath that sounded like it hurt. There was never a business. He made it up. He wanted to get away from the debts here and use the money from selling your house to do it. All the debts, I asked. So many, she said. He's been borrowing for years, putting the apartment up as collateral. And now I've learned he didn't even own it. She shook her head. How is that possible? Here was the opening I needed. A space where truth could sit without revealing everything. Property matters can be complicated, I said, but the immediate problem is the banks. They're coming for repayment. And because you're married, they say you're responsible. And now you have that notice? What will you do? She burst into real tears, not the neat kind people put on for sympathy, but the raw, shocking kind. Every instinct I had shouted to gather her in my arms and promise better days, but I remembered the blade-cold tone she used at the clinic. The way she erased me with a sentence, the disdain in each syllable, the lesson needed to hold. Have you consulted an attorney? I asked gently. I can't afford one, she said. We spent everything overseas, and Edward took what was left. So what now, I thought. Maybe I could stay with you for a while. Just until I find work and can rent a small place. There it was. Plain and honest. After discarding me selling what I loved, and cutting me off as if I were a stranger. My child had come back, eyes lowered, and asked for shelter. Of course, I said at once, "This will always be your home." She blinked, startled that the door opened so easily. "Really, after everything, you are my daughter. That does not change." She stood and held me like a person clinging to driftwood. I returned the embrace, though not with the blind, unconditional surrender of the past. There was intention in it now, a boundary. "À plan. Thank you, Mom," she said, wiping her face. "I'll find a job quickly. I won't be a burden. Don't fret about that today. Rest. We'll look at options tomorrow." She left later to gather a few belongings. I remained where I was, fingers on the rim of my coffee cup, surprised by how smoothly the pieces fell into place. She had come to me exactly as I had hoped, exhausted, desperate, without illusions, and, best of all, still convinced I was the abandoned, penniless mother deserving her pity. That illusion would help the medicine go down. But this was only the first act. Having her under my roof would let me do the careful work, give her a sense of safety. Let her breathe. Help her believe she had found a sanctuary, and then, when the lesson could take root, show her the line between poverty that is chosen and poverty that arrives as the price of our choice. That evening, I called Miss Peterson again. "One more request," I said. "What do you need?" "Mrs. Brooks, I want a full accounting of Edward's obligations. Every creditor, every balance, every document he signed. And I want to know every legal avenue to separate Angela from liability. That will take time," he said. "But it's entirely feasible." "Good. And, Mr. Peterson, absolute discretion. No one, especially my daughter, can know I am steering this." "Understood," he replied. "May I ask your endgame?" "It's simpler," I said. "I intend to rescue my daughter. But before I do, she must understand the bottom. She has reached not to crush her, but so she can tell herself the truth." When the call ended, I opened the bottle of wine Robert had tucked away for celebrations. The first glass was a promise to myself. I would be patient and I would be firm. For the first time in many months, the good cards sat in my hand, and I knew how to play them. Angela came the next day with 2 suitcases and a single cardboard box, the remnants of an entire life stripped down to what would fit in a trunk. I watched her unpack in her childhood room. Shame colored her movements. Even the way she folded a sweater told a story about a woman who had traded a sparkling condo for the bed where she once hid her diary. "Mom, I found this in the apartment," she said, stepping into the hall with a manila envelope. It was with Edward's things. "It has your name on it." My heart stuttered. Another gift from Robert, arriving exactly on time. I kept my face still. "My name, how odd," I said. "Yes. Look," she insisted, handing it over. The handwriting was Robert's, neat and sure, but the envelope was smaller and newer than the one I had opened weeks earlier. "Maybe Edward found it among Dad's papers after he died and forgot to give it to you," Angela offered. "Possibly," I said. "May I?" I slipped a finger under the flap and eased it open while she watched. Inside lay a short note and a small key. The letter read, "In Robert's careful hand, Antonia. If you are reading this after receiving the main envelope, it means our daughter is facing hardship. This key opens a safe deposit box at the Central Bank downtown. Number 247. Inside is something to help you help her. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert." Over my shoulder, Angela breathed. A safe deposit box. Dad had one. I never knew. I didn't either. I lied. He never mentioned it. Should we go see what's inside? She pressed. I'm not sure, I said, letting doubt linger. Sometimes unopened doors are kinder. But, Mom, she pleaded, there could be important documents or something valuable. It could help us. Her desperation rang true. She would clutch at any rope offered. I could grant her that much. All right, I said after a long pause. Tomorrow. That night we ate together for the first time in many months. Angela cooked over-seasoned pasta and a salad that wilted at the edges, and every bite tasted like guilt and fear. She talked about Europe in broken pieces, each detail worse than the last. He lied about everything. Mom, she said, not just the deal, the debts. 2. I thought it was a small amount. But he owes well over $100,000. And the worst part, he used my name for some of the loans. How would he even manage that he forged my signature? She whispered. When we got married, I signed some documents so he could handle banking on our joint account. I never imagined he'd use them for this. Can you prove you didn't know? I don't know. The banks keep telling me that being married makes me responsible anyway. As for divorce, I can't even find him. His phone is dead. Emails bounce back. Nothing. Perfect. I thought not with joy, but with the relief of a mother who sees a path through the thorns. He had scurried off, leaving my child with the wreckage. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't realize it was so bad. I didn't either, she replied. I thought he loved me, that we were building a life. I was just a convenient door to money, to paperwork, to whatever he wanted. Tears came again. How could I be so blind? Love is a brilliant light, I said softly. It can blind you as easily as it can warm you. But I didn't only break my life, she continued. I broke yours. I took your house, your truck, your things for a man who dropped me at the first opportunity. Now we're two poor women trying to survive. If only she knew the ledger I carried the titles in my filing drawer. The balances she could not imagine. I owned the roof over her head and could erase her debts with a single signature. But the timing mattered more than the rescue. The next day we went to the bank. Angela's hands shook with hope and dread. I kept up my role as the slightly bewildered widow who trusted professionals to explain the hard parts. The clerk checked my identification, led us into the vault, and slid open box number 247. Inside lay jewelry, a cascade of memory and metal rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. Some I recognized from Robert's family, others new to me. An accompanying letter listed each piece and noted an estimated value. Mom, Angela whispered, this is worth a fortune. You think so? I asked, feigning surprise. Yes. Look at this emerald and the pearl necklace. It's exquisite. Dad saved a treasure. Robert's note placed the collection at roughly $200,000. Substantial. Certainly, though modest beside the rest of what he had built. To me, it felt like finding a handful of coins beneath the sofa cushions when you already knew a large account sat waiting at the bank. What do we do with all this? Angela asked. I don't know, I said. They are family pieces. But, Mom, she pressed gently, we could sell some. With the proceeds, you could reclaim your beach house, and I could make a dent in Edward's debts. There it was again, even in crisis. Her first instinct was to funnel value toward cleaning up the wreckage he created. The lesson would take time, but it was working. I kept my face kind and thoughtful and said only, we'll consider every option carefully. Sweetheart, with that money, you could reclaim the beach house, and I could erase a slice of what Edward owes. There it was again, the same reflex I had heard from her so many times. even when something beautiful and irreplaceable finally appeared in her hands. Angela's first instinct was to pour it straight into the crater Edward had left behind. The lesson clearly hadn't settled yet. "Are you absolutely certain you want to turn your father's legacy into a payout for Edward's obligations?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "What choice do I actually have?" "Mom," she said, voice thin with strain, "if I do not make a payment soon, the banks will start moving. They will file the paperwork. They will place liens. They will begin foreclosures on anything they can reach. And technically, nothing is in my name anyway. Everything was set up under Edward. Think very carefully." "Sweetheart," I said, leaning closer so she could see. I meant it. "Once these pieces are gone, they are gone. There is no buying them back at any price. You sell, and the door closes forever." "I know," she whispered, eyes glossy but stubborn. "But what else exists for me right now, with all these legal claims hanging over my head? No decent employee wants to touch my resume. No one is going to hire someone dragging lawsuits behind her. It feels like every door shuts the moment I tell the truth. We carried the velvet trays home like medicine. We were afraid to spill." On the kitchen table, Angela laid each piece out in careful rose rings. Bracelets. Earrings. Necklaces, moving them an inch this way and an inch that way, as if a better arrangement might somehow hurt less. She tried to be clinical. But every time a stone flashed, memory flashed too, watching her translate decades of family history into columns, subtotals, and projected offers felt like being cut into strips. "Mom," she said later, after a long silence, "I think I can get around $180,000 if I part with almost everything." She touched the stacks of cash she had already exchanged at a reputable buyer and inhaled shakily. "It is less than I imagined, but it covers the most urgent fires." "Are you sure this is the step you want to take?" I asked. "I do not see another road," she answered. "If I stall, they will seize whatever they can put their hands on. They might even come sniffing around this house if they convince a judge. I am tied to your properties in any way." The irony did not just sting, it mocked. My daughter was terrified of losing a house that I owned while trying to sue the deserter's creditors with jewels from the same man who had quietly built enough wealth to save her 10 times over. "And how will you decide which balances to pay first?" I asked. "I spoke with a free counselor at the bank," she said, flattening a page of notes with the side of her palm. "She said to start with the loans that are backed by something tangible, actual collateral. Those are the ones that can take property or trigger immediate foreclosure if I miss another deadline." In a handful of weeks, she had changed in ways I could measure. The woman who once sold my belongings without asking now investigated, double-checked, and questioned every detail. Suffering had made her careful, and it had made her delicate in new places. Too. That night, while she sorted creditor letters into neat stacks and wrote due dates on yellow sticky notes, my phone rang. "Mrs. Brooks." "Mr. Peterson said without preamble. "I have the complete profile on Edward's liabilities. The reality is worse than we guessed." "How much worse?" "Exactly. He owes well over $200,000 to several different banks. And he has additional balances with private lenders," he said. "The most troubling part is this: he used falsified documents carrying your daughter's signature on multiple applications. So Angela is exposed." I said. "It is not straightforward," he answered. "If we can show she had no knowledge and did not consent, we can knock out a portion, but it will be long and expensive." "How expensive for a specialist who actually wins these cases? Expect about $50,000 in fees," he said carefully. "And even then, there is no guaranteed result." "I understand," I replied. "And if she simply pays, if she had immediate cash, that would be fastest. But I doubt she can access that much. Draw up whatever filings are necessary to get my daughter disentangled from those debts. I said, "Do not tell her. Not yet. You are going to cover this, Mrs. Brooks. I am going to do whatever it takes to protect my child, just not in the way she expects." When I ended the call, I found Angela staring at the jewelry, as if it were a language she no longer spoke. Her face had the lost look of a little girl who smashed a favorite toy and cannot fit the pieces back together. "What is rolling around in your head?" "Sweetheart, Dad." She breathed. "I keep thinking about how disappointed he would be if he could see what I made of my life." "Your father adored you beyond words," I said. "He would make room for your mistakes." "No, Mom," she said, shaking her head slowly. "He raised me on responsibility. Family, not selfishness. I did the opposite. I walked out on you for a man who lied to me. I sold our family's memories for quick cash. I wrecked everything he built. For the first time since she returned, I heard remorse that wasn't just fear of consequences. This was the kind that names the wrong itself. People stumble." I said, "What matters is the truth you carry afterward." "How do I learn from this?" she asked. "How do I fix what I tore?" That was the door I had been waiting to watch her reach. She was finally standing at it, but it still was not time to show her the staircase on the other side. She had one more step down before the climb could last. In the days that followed, she made her choice. She would sell nearly everything, keeping only the engagement ring Robert had placed on my hand and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I watched her call jewelers, compare written offers, push for better terms, and shake hands only when she was certain. It shredded me to see an entire lineage reduced to receipts, but if she did not feel the weight of each move, the lesson would never root. "Mom, I netted $180,000. She told me, counting and recounting as if the numbers might shift while she blinked. Less than I hoped, but enough to calm the loudest alarms. "Are you absolutely sure?" I asked again. "I do not have a real choice," she said quietly. "If I delay, they escalate. They will try to foreclose. They may even connect this house to the mess." Once more, the cruel symmetry my daughter fearing she might lose my home while using my husband's legacy to sponge up a grifter's debt. "And your order of attack," the counselor said, "to begin with the notes that are secured." She repeated, "Those are the quickest to become disasters." She had grown, no one could deny it. The careless daughter had become a cautious woman, one who read fine print and asked the second and third question. Pain had refined her, though it had not softened every edge yet. That evening, while she reshuffled payment plans and due dates and sorted envelopes by priority, Mr. Peterson called again. "We found Edward," he said. "Where is he?" I asked. "In Paris," he answered. "Exactly where your daughter suspected. And here is the twist: he is trying to gain residency through a sham marriage with the very young woman your daughter mentioned." "A fake marriage," I repeated. "Yes. She wants papers. He wants a way to stay without being sent home," he said. "More importantly, we obtained evidence that he intentionally forged your daughter's signature and planned to run, so Angela can be cleared." "With this?" "Yes," he said. "We can establish fraud and coercion. She should not be responsible for what he did behind her back." It was ideal. I could pull my daughter out legally, and she still would not know that I could have solved it all in a blink with my own funds. "Start the legal process immediately," I said. "Tell no one. I want it finished before I open my mouth to her." "Understood. We are looking at roughly 3 weeks, perhaps a month." "Good," I said, and ended the call. "Who was that?" Angela asked from the doorway, reading my face the way only a daughter can. "A woman looking for Mrs. Davis on the corner," I said mildly. "Wrong number." The lie slid out like a practiced step. Every day, my double life felt less like a deception and more like a discipline I owed to both of us. In Angela's eyes, I remained the abandoned mother, trying to keep the lights on. In reality, I was a well-supplied guardian, orchestrating her rescue one lesson at a time. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched her wrestle with a kind of arithmetic she had never had to do: how to stretch a grocery list, how to counter a collection agent without losing your temper, how to apply for work when your credit report reads like a disaster diary. It was merciless. And it was necessary. Mom, I went to 3 job interviews today. She told me one evening, heels in her hand, feet swollen, posture sagging. 2 said they will not hire anyone with pending legal trouble. The 3rd offered me a part-time night shift cleaning offices. Will you take it? I do not see another path. She said, the pay is small, but it is a start. If I work nights, I can keep looking for something else during the day. Watching my daughter, who had been comfortable for over 40 years, pull on rubber gloves and learn how to scrub, lift, and haul without complaint broke me and made me proud in the same breath. She was finally facing the world without demanding a shortcut. Can you handle the physical part? I asked, studying her face. I will learn, she said. I cannot keep leaning on you. It is enough that you are letting me stay. This is your home. I said, no, Mom, she replied gently. It is yours. I am here because you chose kindness, and I will not use that up. On her first night shift, Aurora knocked and sat down across from me with a mug of tea, eyes lingering on the family photos that ran like a timeline from hallway to kitchen. Antonia, can I ask something? She said softly. Did you foresee Angela coming back like this? What do you mean? I asked. When she left, Aurora said, she was so sure, so certain of all that glitter. She talked about the grand life in Europe and Edward's shining success. Now she is back broken, working nights, sleeping in her old bedroom. Life turns, I said. It does, she agreed. But I see something else. She is not only sad, she looks humbled. As if life taught her something it had tried to teach before and she refused to hear it. Aurora had a gift for naming truths without poking the bruise. What do you think she learned? I asked. That the things she took for granted were never guaranteed. She said, a mother's love, a home that waits for you. Mercy, maybe, I said. Aurora, can I say something? When Angela left and spoke to you the way she did, Aurora went on. Many of us thought you would never open your door to her again. But here you are feeding her and giving her a bed. She is my daughter. I said simply, she is. Aurora nodded. But not everyone would do what you are doing after being treated so badly. If only she knew the whole script, how I could have ended the crisis with a single wire transfer. But chose patience, so the lesson would not evaporate. The second life grew easy again. Do you think I am doing the right thing? I asked. I think you are doing what a good mother does, she said. And I also think Angela must truly recognize what she tossed aside when she abandoned you. She needs to value you not as a rescuer on call, but as the woman who built a stable life over 45 years. She has to learn to respect you, not merely need you. Bullseye. That was the center of my plan. I did not want a daughter who returned because rent was due. I wanted a woman who chose her mother because she finally understood what love costs and what respect looks like. How does that happen? I asked. I think it is already happening, Aurora said with a small smile. Listen to how she speaks to you now. No orders. No sighs. No rolling eyes. Gratitude. The real kind. When Angela came home from her shift, her shoulders drooped. But there was a new steadiness in the way she set her bag down. She had earned those dollars with her hands. They felt different than the ones that used to slide out of Edward's wallet. "How was the first night?" I asked. "Hard," she admitted. "But not the nightmare I imagined. The other women were kind. One of them, Mrs. Johnson, showed me how to work smarter so my back wouldn't scream." "Mrs. Johnson," I repeated. "She is 60. Has cleaned offices for 20 years. Angela said. Her husband left her with 3 children. She told me it was never her dream. But it gave her independence, and it gave her dignity. She sounds wise," I said. "She is," Angela replied. She said there are 2 kinds of people in our jobs: people who never had a true chance, and people who had chances and threw them away. Then she looked me in the eye and asked which one I am. "And what did you tell her?" I asked. Bracing. "The truth," Angela said. "That I had every opportunity, parents who loved me, a safe home, an inheritance. And I wrecked it, chasing a man who did not deserve a bus ticket." What did she say to that? She laughed and said, "Honey, at least you know why you are here. That puts you 1 step ahead of most." Angela poured a glass of water and slid into the chair across from me. "Mom, these weeks have been the hardest of my life," she said slowly. "But they are also the clearest." "Why do you think that is?" I asked. "Because I finally see what matters," she said. "Not money. Not marble countertops. Not impressing people who would never visit you in a hospital. What matters are the people who stand beside you when every single shiny thing falls off your life." "Angela," I began. "Please, let me finish," she said, voice steady. "You have every right to hate me. I left you when you were most vulnerable. I sold what Dad left you. I treated you like an inconvenience. And now I am here, asking for shelter and forgiveness. I forgave you already." I said. "I have not forgiven myself," she answered. "And I will not, until I can prove I have changed, not with promises, but with what I do." The next morning, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks, I have excellent news," he said. "The legal work is nearly complete. We can free your daughter from all of Edward's debts." It was time, after weeks of watching her work, cut back, and tell the truth even when it stung. I was ready to show her that she had never been alone a single day. "Set a meeting," I told him. "It is time for my daughter to hear everything." He arranged it for Friday morning. I told Angela that I had found a lawyer who might help, and she agreed to come, even though fear flickered at the edges of her mouth. "Mom, I cannot afford an attorney," she murmured as we rode the elevator. "I barely have enough for bus fare." "Let us hear what he says," I told her. "We will decide after." Mr. Peterson greeted us with his calm, steady professionalism. "Mrs. Brooks, Miss Brooks, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to 2 chairs. "Thank you for seeing me," Angela replied. "But I should warn you, my finances are a disaster. I probably cannot afford much." "That is exactly what we are here to discuss," he said, glancing at me before sliding a thick folder across the desk. "Please review these documents." Angela opened the file, scanning line by line. Confusion creased her forehead. Then surprise widened her eyes, slowly. The shape of what she was reading assembled itself. "I do not understand," she said finally. "This says Edward forged my signature. It says there is proof of fraud. It says I am not responsible." "That is correct," Mr. Peterson said. "We have been digging for several weeks. We found enough to show you were a victim of identity fraud." "How is that even possible?" she asked. "And who paid for this investigation?" "I do not have that kind of money." Mr. Peterson turned to me. "My qui, Angela," I said gently. There is something I have kept to myself. Your father left me more than you knew. Much more. What do you mean? She asked, turning in her chair to face me fully. Mr. Peterson, I said. The other folder. He placed a second file on the desk. Property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, the quiet empire Robert had built and hidden for the sake of our peace. Angela read for a long time. The room quiet except for paper, sliding over paper. I watched confusion turn to shock and then to dawning comprehension. Mom, she said at last, eyes lifting from the pages. This says you are the owner of the building where I lived. Yes, I said. And that you hold other properties, bank accounts, investments. Yes. So when I sold the beach house, I sold your house. It was fraudulent. I have already reversed it, I said softly. She set both folders down, fingers still braced on the edges. How long have you known? Since the day you called me from the clinic, I said. When you came home from Europe asking for help, I already knew. When you cried yourself to sleep, I still knew. She closed her eyes, drew a breath, and opened them again with a steadiness that startled me. Why? Mom, she asked quietly, why did you let me suffer when you could have ended it with a phone call? I had been carrying this answer like a stone in my chest. Because there was something you could not learn any other way, I said. You needed to feel the real value of what you had thrown away. Family, respect, responsibility. When you walked out, it was not only money you took dignity, you took love, you took trust. Angelas de arskame. But they were not the frantic sobs of a person cornered by bills. They were deeper, heavier tears that fall when truth finally sits down and refuses to leave. I walked away when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like trash. Yes. And you rescued me anyway? Yes, but not the way you imagined. I did not rescue you by handing over cash so you could repeat the same choices. I rescued you by letting you bottom out so you could figure out how to climb on your own. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and spoke gently. Miss Brooks, your mother has covered every legal cost required to release you from Edward's liabilities. She has also unwound the fraudulent sales and restored all of the properties to their proper status. You are fully clear of legal exposure. And the cleaning job I started? Angela asked. Turning to me, you can walk away if you choose, I said. But I hope you will not. Why? She asked, searching my face. Because that job is teaching you something you never had to learn when life was easy, I said softly. It is teaching you the worth of your own effort, the honor in honest work, the habit of respecting every single dollar you earn. Angela brushed away tears and met my eyes with a look I had not seen in years. It was not the gaze of a daughter pleading with her mother. It was the steady regard of one grown woman toward another she esteems. Do you forgive me? Mom, I forgave you long ago. Sweetheart, the real question is whether you can forgive yourself. I am not sure I can, she whispered. What I did feels unforgivable. People fail. Angela, what matters is what we decide to do once we face our failures. Mr. Peterson stepped out and gave us a few minutes alone. We sat in quiet, letting the truth settle around us. Mom, Angela said at last, I need you to hear this. Even if you did not have any of this money, even if you truly were the poor widow I believed you to be, I would still have learned the same lesson. What lesson is that? That nothing outranks knowing someone loves you without conditions, she said. These last few weeks, the single thing that kept me from falling apart was the knowledge that I had a home with you. No matter how badly I had wrecked my life, you were still my mother. That will never change. Angela, I know, she said, but I also know I can never again treat that love as automatic. I have to earn it. Every day. With respect. With gratitude. with what I do, not only with what I say. We left Mr. Peterson's office with a relationship remade from the inside out. We were no longer simply mother and daughter bound by blood and routine. We were two adult women who had chosen one another after surviving the hardest test either of us had ever known. The weeks that followed became about rebuilding, though not in the way Angela first envisioned. Even knowing I had the means to erase every obstacle, she chose to keep the night job cleaning offices. "Mom, I need to finish what I began," she told me one afternoon while buttoning her plain uniform. "I cannot slide back into comfort and pretend none of it happened. Are you certain you do not have to sentence yourself to penance forever? It is not punishment," she said, tying her hair back. "It is how I remind myself who I was and who I intend to be." I watched her adjust her sleeves, an action I could never have pictured a few months earlier when she lived in that glossy condo with Edward. Something in her carriage had changed. She was not the shattered woman who once showed up at my door in tears. She was a person who had found pride in straightforward labor. That afternoon, Aurora stopped by, just as she had done regularly since Angela returned. "Antonia, there are the oddest whispers moving through the neighborhood," she said, settling at my table. "What sort of whispers? People are saying you are not nearly as poor as we all believed," she said carefully. "Someone saw Angela leaving a very fancy law office downtown. And then there she was at the bank, paying off a pile of debts. People do talk." "Aurora, they do," she agreed. "But the talk is that you recovered your beach house and somehow untangled all of Angela's legal mess. That takes real money. Antonia, Aurora knew me too well for me to dodge forever. What is it you truly want to know?" "I want to know whether my friend of 40 years has been hiding the truth about her situation." I poured tea for both of us and took the chair across from her. It was time to tell at least one other person. Robert left far more than anyone realized. "Aurora far more." "How much more?" she asked, eyes wide. "Enough that Angela and I will never again have to worry about bills," I said. She sat for a long moment, absorbing it. "Then why pretend to be struggling all this time?" "Because Angela needed to learn something that could not be taught any other way," I answered. I told her everything: Angela's cutting phone call, my silent plan, the weeks I let her sink to the bottom, and the unveiling at Mr. Peterson's office. "Antonia, that is both brilliant and awful," Aurora said, hands wrapped around her cup. "Awful. Yes, because you watched your own daughter suffer when you had the power to end it," she said. "But also brilliant, because I see the reason. If you had simply bailed her out, she would have learned that someone would always rescue her from the consequences of her choices." "Exactly. Did it not tear you up to watch her struggle every single day?" I said. "Every night I heard her cry. Every morning I watched her leave for work, wrung out and determined. But if I had rushed in too soon, the lesson would not have stayed." "And do you believe she learned it? Look for yourself," I said. "She knows she could live comfortably now. Yet she keeps that job. She knows she could move into a nicer place. Yet she chooses to stay here with me. She knows the debts are gone. Yet she is using her own savings to help women she works beside who are climbing out of similar holes." "She is helping other women?" Aurora asked, surprised. "She is," I said. "She has befriended her co-workers and set aside some of her pay to help one woman cover her little boy's daycare." Aurora smiled. "That is not the Angela who flew to Europe." "No, it is not," I agreed. "This Angela understands that money is a tool, not the point. She understands that dignity grows from work and respect, not from shiny things." That evening, when Angela came in from her shift, she found me reading in the living room. "Mom, I have to tell you something," she said, dropping into the chair across from me. Today, Mrs. Johnson asked if I was the daughter of the wealthy lady who lives up on the north side. What did you tell her? I told her yes, that you have enough money. I do not need to work. She said. Do you know what she asked next? What did she ask? She asked why I am still working. Angela said, almost smiling. So I told her I have to prove to myself that I can stand up on my own 2 feet. And what did Mrs. Johnson say? She laughed and said, honey, that is the difference between being rich and playing rich. Your mama taught you what real wealth is. Mrs. Johnson is a wise woman. I said, she is. Angela agreed. She made me see something essential. It is not the amount of money you hold, it is how you use it and how you relate to it. Angela moved to the sofa beside me and took my hand. Mom, I have made a decision. I want to continue living here with you, but not as a daughter who just crawled back to her mother's house. What do you mean? I want to live here as an adult who chooses to share her life with her mother. She said, that means I will pay my share of expenses, contribute to the upkeep, and treat what we have as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect one another. Angela, you do not have to yes. I do, she said gently. I need our relationship to be different from what it used to be. Back then, I took your love and care for granted. Now, I want to be a woman who honors and protects the most important relationship in her life. And your job, I am going to keep working, she said. Though maybe not cleaning offices forever. I want to return to school. I want to prepare for work that actually helps people. But I want to move step by step and earn every chance I get. Do you know what you want to study? Yes, she said. Social work. These weeks have shown me how many people live through crises without anyone to stand beside them. I want to use the resources we have to help women walking the same road I walked. It could not have been more fitting. Angela had learned to value what she possessed, and she had found a way to turn that hard-won wisdom outward. And Edward, I asked, Mr. Peterson said he was arrested in France for that sham marriage. She replied, he will be deported soon. But honestly, Mom, I do not care. That chapter is over. You do not feel any bitterness, no, she said, shaking her head. Without meaning to, Edward did me a favor. If he had not abandoned and betrayed me, I never would have crashed. And without crashing, I never would have learned how to value what truly matters. That night I slept peacefully for the first time in months. The plan had worked. Angela had learned what she needed. And she emerged tougher, wiser, more compassionate. Robert would have been proud. Half a year later, our life had found a balance we never would have imagined. Angela finished her social work coursework with excellent marks. And I decided to use part of my resources to establish a foundation for women facing domestic violence and financial abandonment. Mom, the university letter came. Angela said one morning, stepping into the kitchen with an envelope, I was accepted into the master's program. I start next term. That is wonderful. I said, we can cover the tuition without blinking. I know, she replied, but I'm going to pay for it with my own savings. I have been putting money aside from my city job. The paycheck is not large, but I have learned how to live on the essentials and respect every dollar. Are you certain I am? It is part of who I am now. That afternoon, Aurora joined us for tea, as she had done nearly every Friday. She had become a confidant to us both and had watched our transformation with keen interest. Antonia, I have to admit something, she said, pouring a second cup. At first, I thought you were cruel to Angela. And what do you think now? Now I think you are the wisest mother I have met, she said. Look at your daughter, truly look. It was true. The Angela bent over her textbooks in the living room was not the same woman who had boarded a plane months earlier. This Angela carried a calm that came from inside and a confidence that rested on her own effort, not on things that could be bought. Did you know? I saw her at the market yesterday buying vegetables for a family she is helping through her job, Aurora added. When I asked why she used her own money instead of a program fund, she said some needs cannot be measured on a government ledger. That evening, Angela and I ate on the porch, a rhythm we had made our own. It was our time to review the day, trace ideas for the future, and simply be together. Mom, I received a strange letter today, she said, slicing her salad. From whom, Edward? I asked, my stomach tightening. Yes, she said. From a prison in France. Apparently, he got 2 years for the sham marriage. He wrote that he regrets everything and wants my forgiveness. How does that land with you, honestly? It does not, she said calmly. I feel no anger, no sorrow, no fire for revenge. It is like that part of my life took place decades ago, not months. Will you write back no? She said, not because I hate him, but because there is nothing left to say. The Angela who married him is gone. The woman sitting here has nothing to discuss with him. Her voice held a strength I admired. She had grown a backbone that came from falling and then standing up again. Do you know what the whole journey taught me? Mom, what that real love is not the voice that feeds you exactly what you long to hear, she said. Real love teaches you what you need to learn, even when it hurts. Edward told me the lines I wanted and made me feel special. Convinced me I deserved luxury without effort. You taught me that genuine wealth springs from work, respect, and relationships that hold up under weather. Later, after she went to study, I sat on the porch alone, looking up at the stars and thinking of Robert. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and for the first time, I felt I had kept that promise the right way. I had not cared for her by handing her money whenever she cried. I cared for her by teaching her to care for herself. I had not saved her by erasing her problems. I saved her by allowing her to learn how to solve them. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned our first visit to the beach house since it was restored. Ready? I asked as we climbed into the truck. I think so, she said. The drive was quiet in a comfortable way. When we arrived, Angela stayed seated for a moment, staring at the little house where we had spent so many summers. It looks exactly the same, she murmured. Some things hold steady, I said. Others do not. I am not the woman you sold out from under, and you are not the woman who sold it. We went inside. Everything was clean and orderly, just as Robert and I had always kept it. Angela walked from room to room, touching the backs of chairs, pausing at the photographs on the walls. Mom, I owe you a specific apology, she said. You already apologized. Sweetheart. No, she insisted softly. I mean for this house. Not only for selling it, but for collapsing decades of family life into a simple transaction. It is forgiven, I said. This place holds 40 years of summers, of birthdays, of holidays, she said. Dad built that porch with his hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim at that beach. And I converted it all into cash to fund the adventure of a man who did not deserve a second of our time. She sat on the sofa where Robert used to read on Sundays. Do you know what hurts the most? What? That when I sold it, I felt nothing, she said. It was just another property. Standing here now, I feel Dad in every corner. I can hear his laugh, smell his coffee, see his glasses waiting on the end table. He is here. Angela. In the ways that matter, he has always been here. I know, she said, And I know he is proud of how you carried all of this. We spent the day cooking, cleaning, and fixing small things. It felt like a ritual of reweaving not only with the house, but with the values it held. At sunset, we sat side by side on the porch Robert had built, watching the water shift colors. "Mom, I have an idea," she said. "What is it I want to turn this house into a short-term refuge for women leaving violent homes, a place to stay while they rebuild," she said. It was perfect. Robert would have loved knowing that his beach house would shelter families in their hardest hour. "I think that is a beautiful idea," I said. "The foundation can help cover the costs, and you can oversee the program through your work." "Are you sure about transforming our family sanctuary like that? The best sanctuaries are the ones we share," I said. "Your father always believed a house does not become a home until it opens its doors to people who need care." He was right. Robert had offered beds, meals, and kindness to relatives, friends, and neighbors who needed a landing place. We drove home that night with a new project and a renewed bond. We were no longer together from obligation or necessity. We were two women who had deliberately chosen to build a life rooted in love, respect, and a shared purpose. Before I slept, I spoke to Robert in the quiet. "We did it. My love. Our daughter finally understands what counts." And for the first time since he left this world, I felt an answer. "I knew you would. You are both stronger than you think." Justice came to us not as revenge, but as education, not as punishment, but as transformation. In the end, we gained something worth far more than money. We gained a truthful relationship built on a foundation strong enough to outlast whatever storms still lie ahead. Did you enjoy my story, and which city are you listening from? Join me in the comments. If the story moved you, you can send a super thanks to help me keep bringing more of these real-life tales. Thank you for your kindness. I cannot wait to read your thoughts about this one. On the screen, you will find 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There is so much more waiting on my channel. Do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.